Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If I may have your attention, this is the last time of Opera Conference 2017. I will have to ask for your attention, and that's a good thing. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity today to hear from someone who's very, very special in our field. You may have read, and if you haven't, I absolutely recommend it, Sing for Your Life, the wonderful story of Ryan Speedo Green's entry into the world of opera. Entry into the world of opera because the future course of his career is being written today with offers from the greatest opera companies around the world. He's currently singing Osmin at Houston Grand Opera in the Abduction from the Seraglio. And I'm really grateful to Houston Grand Opera for giving him a release so he could come here to Dallas and drive and experience a bit of Texas on the way to Dallas from Houston. We're going to chat a bit about his life and his career, and I hope you will join me in welcoming to the stage Ryan Speedo Green. Welcome.
Thank you.
So great to have you here. We found the most operatic chairs in the hotel that we could possibly find. And here we wanted to set out sort of a crown and scepter in these chairs because certainly you will be singing great kingly roles down the road.
You're too kind, you're too kind.
I always start out my conversations by asking, who brought you to your first opera?
Who brought me to my first opera? Well, I have to take you back, not that long ago actually, about 16 years ago. I was 15 and I was part of a magnet school for the arts called Governor School for the Arts in Norfolk, Virginia. And every other year, my high school took a field trip to New York City to see musicals and a couple shows at the Met. And so that was my first year that they went with me. And it was my first time singing opera, so I saw a musical beforehand. I think it was like 42nd Street or something on Broadway. And right after that, we went to go see Carmen at the Met. And I think it was in 2001, 2002. And what made, already walking to the Met, the sort of like Disneyland for opera, was already amazing enough. And walking in and seeing the chandeliers and, it's so beautiful, was already a huge experience for a kid like me coming from a trailer park in Virginia. But what made it even more special was the fact that the lead singer, like the title role, was played by an African-American woman by the name of Denise Graves. And for me, as a young African-American male who, first of all, thought opera was something that was sung by, a ginormous white Viking lady, like breaking windows, it changed my entire perspective. The opera itself is one of the most welcoming for beginners that you could possibly ask for. And then seeing this, a person who looked like me on stage, making me feel all of these emotions, which, I talk about, feeling sad, feeling happy, laughing, crying, every emotion you could feel on the emotional spectrum. And then afterwards, getting to meet her, changed my entire interpretation, almost opened a huge door in my mind of what I could do as a musician, as an artist, and as an African American.
Do you think that the opera just resonated with a natural part of you that was there waiting to be discovered? Or does opera have the potential, in your view, to connect to anybody who walks into the opera house?
I think, especially now that it's become a more diverse art form, not only in the people who are on stage, but the interpretations of the story, both modernizing it and putting it in different periods, different plot lines, still with the same music. I think now it can become more relevant. Before, like if we were performing the same productions from the 1920s, even though that would be a glorious callback to the olden days, I think if someone my age or younger walked in to see it, they might be a little put off. And I think it also helps that there are so many composers now that are producing modern operas with modern stories. Yeah. And I think it's important.
Have you done any new opera yet, or are you still working through
I have done some new opera. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Death of Klinghoffer.
Sure.
I was in the Met production, the one that was so welcomed by the New York community. And it's ironically enough, the day after the first performance, there were no protesters. But I think it's our fault and it's their fault. I think it's a fault, their fault for not putting it more out there, like having discussions like we're having now, and also for the people who are protesting it to do more research on it, to know like that one 3-minute aria is not the entire opera, and that there are things called bad guys in operas.
Yeah.
Scorca was one of them. You know, he did some awful things.
Indeed.
But we don't hate the opera because of it.
And was it really different for you because your training and all the coaching is in sort of the traditional opera singing, opera repertoire? Was it very different for you to sing a contemporary piece?
I think the challenging part was the use of electrical instruments.
Yeah.
I tried to do a rock band when I was in high school, and so I had a little bit of experience with electrical instruments, but I think performing with synthesizers and stuff like that was completely new feeling, especially trying to find your pitch, because it all kind of sounds like one mesh of sound, and when you're performing a piece that's atonal, and it can be kind of tough to find your pitch. But that's, other than that, like for me, the rhythm, the story, that all fit in perfectly.
Neat. You know, when you read the book, and again, I really recommend that you read the book, you talk a lot about the people who have mattered to you, the people who really came at key inflection points in your life and in your career, but even more in the blending of your life and career, because they're one in such an important way. And I listed some in reverse chronological order, and there were certainly 4 at the Met: Galetha Nichols, Brian Ziegler, Ken Noda, and by Met extension, Marc Oswald. And how did these people enter into your life and help guide you and make a difference for you in your life?
Yeah, when I did the Met competition, Met National Council audition when I was 24, I was, I don't know, to put in the lightest terms, a diamond in the rough. And the judges who judged the Met competition saw in me potential to sing on the stage of the Met. And the people who were part of the Living Young Artist program, including Ken Noda, Brian Ziegler, Marc Oswald, and Galetha Nichols, who runs the National Council, pointed me in the direction to get the kind of training that I needed to make myself less of a diamond in the rough and more of a diamond. And they each play different roles. As far as Brian Ziegler, being the administrative part and the sort of big boss part, helping me audition for the right people, have the right kind of outside opportunities for roles that I wouldn't necessarily get to sing at the Met. For instance, I sing Basilio with Utah Opera, and it was an amazing experience for me. Helped me perform that role, where now I perform it at the Vienna State Opera and many other places. And also, with Ken Noda, seeing someone, Ken Noda is also a minority, and one of the most amazing coach pianists I have ever met, and one of the greatest mentors for young singers. And in him, I saw someone who a lot of similarities of someone who had to push through adversity and preconceptions to create the image and career that he has now. And he really guided me. He's sort of like, I was told that every singer kind of needs an inner circle of people that they trust. Right. And he's never held back with me as being completely honest in both the good and the bad. And I think it's important to have that kind of person in your life who's good at giving constructive criticism, because opera is a field where criticism is part of the job, the territory. And so he's that for me. And Galetha Nichols, who was sort of like my Met mom, from the moment she first heard me in the regionals of the Met competition, she's always had a sort of a guiding finger in my career. And when I went through some personal problems during my time in Lindemann, and I lost my father when I was in Lindemann, and she was there for me not only as a mentor but as a friend. Yeah. And I think that's incredibly important. And Marc Oswald was my voice teacher, which I have to give him all the props. He helped train me in all of my arias, my audition arias, was there to hear me psychologically, because psychiatrically, sorry, because a lot, as a singer we have so many emotions that go into our pieces, and collecting them and putting them out in the right way is so important.
In making my notes for Speedo, I want to emphasize in a little bit in this chat is not only what people did to intervene beneficially for you, but how we can all intervene for others. So given what those four in the professional realm did to help you, to step in and help, how can others do that? What were the qualities that they brought to it that you would hope we all would display to young people trying to get ahead in the field?
I mean, there's certain things we can do in each phase of a singer, or maybe a person who doesn't even realize that they want to be a singer's career. But as far as their case in the upper administration post-college, I just think honesty is always great. Some of the best growing moments I had as an artist were when someone told me that I was doing something completely wrong and didn't butter it up. But some people aren't, it works with others, doesn't work with others. For me, it was incredibly important because I love a challenge, and I'm always looking for things to work on. And I think this sort of opera singers that I idolize are the opera singers who are never done being an artist. And I think that's important.
Denise Graves, she was your first Carmen. Do you stay in touch with her at all?
I mean, for the long time, I just, it's kind of like if a person is in love with a football player or like a sports person, or we all, I was too sort of embarrassed and too shy to ever like tell her like how amazing she was to me. And honestly, one of the first things with the book talking about it, like I still was like, I don't know, like what if she reads it and knows like that I'm like that she was, but it was sort of an amazing occurrence after I did after I saw her in Carmen. I got to go backstage and meet her, which was a huge thing for me for imagining myself as an opera singer, because when I met her, I saw this diva on stage performing one of the greatest roles in her voice type. And after I met her backstage, she greeted all of us. It was like 40 of us young high school kids, like we were her best friends, her best friends' children. She took pictures with all of us, called me her boo. I mean, she gave time out of her really long night, because it is a long night for Carmen, to hang out with us. And I think that was really, really huge. And that's something as I can speak to later about artists giving back as well. Like that kind of time with young singers or even fans, it's incredibly important in this field. And so later on, when I had my first like major role debut, I did Colline this fall at the Metropolitan Opera in La Boheme. And ironically enough, opening night, I'm walking backstage to the green room to greet some of my family and friends, and who was there in the green room was Denise Graves, who happened to hear about my story and how much she meant to me, and came up to see me and tell me how much I meant to her. It was an amazing feeling.
What a great story that is. How wonderful of her to be there.
She's an amazing person.
That's great. That's really great. Mr. Brown in your life, and there's a wonderful quote from him, a motto: "Education without application is useless information."
Yes. If you can imagine, this 6'4", very sonorous toned man, sort of. I mean, I try to model myself after him a little bit, and he would always walk into the room and he would say, "My name is Robert Brown," and he was this sort of father to so many of the young singers in my Magnet School for the Arts, Government School for the Arts in Norfolk, Virginia. He was the chorus master and one of the coach accompanists and voice teachers at the school. And when I first initially got into this program, I was not the best of musicians out there. I could barely read music. Also, I had a really horrible stage fright problem, where I remember my first role in an opera. I had to sing The Ghost in Ballad of Baby Doe, and I said something like "Watch Fob of Purest Gold," like 2 lines. And I get on stage. I practiced this for like 3 or 4 weeks. I get on stage, it's final dress, and the conductor literally had to stare at me and speak the words to me because I could not get them out of my mouth. And so in my first year, they thought about moving apart from me, because they thought maybe this may be not the best place for me to be. And Robert Brown took it upon himself that he would be my voice teacher, and he would make sure that by the end of my sophomore year, I had all the tools to be a part of the program. And he did. He kicked my butt, and he would we had voice lessons like once a week, and he told me that I would need more. He told me I would need at least 3 a week. And he went to my mother and told her that, okay, it's this much money to pay for lessons. And my mom at the time was raising me and my brother by herself. And she's like, I can't afford that. And so he said, okay, I'll do it for free. He's like, but you have to come take him home. And she's like, well, I have to work 3 jobs, so I can't do it. And so he took it upon himself to drive me 40 minutes to my trailer and 40 minutes back home just for an hour lesson 3 times a week so I could learn the rudimentary skills that most high school musicians know how to do. And it was invaluable to me, like with that sort of extra effort, and which he didn't have to do, and nor did I ask for it. But he took it upon himself to make sure that he saw something in me that I didn't see myself.
Just remarkable, and we talk about recruiting people into the field of opera, what an investment Mr. Brown made in you to recruit you into the art form he loved so much.
Yes.
He comes across just magnificently in the book.
He is the book can't even give him justice in the way that he was a father figure to me in the time when I didn't know my father. And he's the first person to tell me that I could sing at the Met. That day after I saw Denise Graves, I walked out of the Metropolitan Opera and I was with Mr. Brown, and he happened to be friends with Denise Graves as well. Which is probably one of the reasons why we got to go back and meet her. I walked out of the theater, and I told Mr. Brown that I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I told him that I want to sing at the Met. I told him that's my dream. Like, it was the first time I ever probably spoke a dream out loud, and it was the first focused motive I had in my life. And Mr. Brown turned to me. He told me, okay, he's like, he gave me this really long list of things that I even had to do to audition for the Met Chorus, including going to like multiple colleges and going to young artist program and learning how to play piano and learning a foreign language and all of these things that I had to do. And this is 50-year-old Speedo who could barely read music, and he told me all of these things. But in my mind, I took it to heart, and I think I took that list and put it in the back of my head. And as I got older, I checked off each thing that he said I had to do, which were a lot. And 9 years later, I had my debut at the Met.
It's an incredible story. Did you have this speaking voice of yours at the age of 15?
No, I was a tenor, actually. Yeah. It's funny how my list of favorite singers changed as puberty took effect. But I had dreams of singing high C's when I was in high school, and alas, those dreams did not come true.
If you walked into my voice studio with that speaking voice, I would say, you're going to be an opera singer. I'll do anything that it takes.
No, I was actually at a really squeaky high voice for most of my high school tenure, and I think it was about college when I hit a late puberty and started growing facial hair that things changed.
Wow. Mrs. Hughes, and she early on in school taught you, the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech and the content of your character, a really important phrase.
Yes. So imagine again, I'll take you back to when I was about probably 7 or 8 years old. I was put into a sort of special ed class for 7 or 8 of the worst kids in my school district. I was a very, very, very bad child, and to put it easily. And when I entered her class, imagine see this little 5'1", blonde, curly-haired lady named Elizabeth Hughes. And the way that I introduced myself to her was by throwing my desk at her and telling her that I would not be taught by a white woman. And instead of kicking me out of her class and sending me to the principal, like most educators would do, and they'd be absolutely correct in doing so, she took away my chair and told me I could learn from the floor. And when I'm ready to learn from my desk, I could have my desk and my chair back. And it was like sort of a tough love lesson, but she didn't give up on me. And I think that was important. And then right after that, she taught everyone in her class, both white, black, Hispanic, it didn't matter who you were, she taught all of us the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. And she made us, each of us recite it every day we were in our class. Because she wanted all of us to know, like, despite our color, despite our background, it didn't matter about that. It mattered the content of our character, how we treated others would be how we were treated in her class. And she made us recite all this. And when I was young, I didn't fully understand what it meant, but it stayed with me. And as I got older and was wise enough to make the correct decisions in my life, it's been my mantra.
she and her husband were at your debut in Vienna.
They were, and they were my debut at the Met. They saw me graduate high school. They saw me my first recital. They saw me graduate college. Yeah, they were at my wedding. They're an amazing educators.
Again, a story of people just going above and beyond the standard definition of effort to make something of someone with great talent. It's a remarkable story. The unnamed, at least I couldn't find the name, the football coach who steered you toward chorus class for an easy credit.
I mean, that's not such a big deal. Yeah, I mean, ironically enough, it was a combination of luck and being the right place, right time. When I auditioned for Government School for the Arts, my freshman year of high school, I did it because I thought that's what I had to do to get a decent grade in my class so I could pursue my future NFL career, which obviously did not happen. There still might be time. I don't think so. But what's even the more for me, I didn't even think about it as a teenager, but by that point in my life, I had moved about an hour and 20 minutes away from Miss Hughes because I had spent some time in juvenile detention, and my mom moved away from that area to sort of give me a new chance to start anew. And so I'd begun school in this new area in Windsor, which is about an hour away from where I was originally. And when I auditioned for Government School for the Arts, I went into the audition singing the Star Spangled Banner. I was a tenor, by the way. And I was singing, I think I was singing Caro Mio Ben, and really badly though. And I did my audition for Robert Brown and Alan Fisher, who is the head of Government School for the Arts. And I walked out of the audition room, and waiting outside of the audition room was Mrs. Hughes' husband, Leon Hughes, who happened to be the principal of the Magna School for the Arts. Ironically enough, which is an hour and 10 minutes away from where they lived. And I had completely forgotten that, when I was in her class, he had just gotten the job, and he had told me about it, and I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And it went out one ear, out of the other. And I think probably had a little bit to do with me getting in, I'm sure, regardless of how I got in, because I was definitely not an amazing singer back then, I will be very thankful to him and the Government School for giving me a chance.
You say in the book, and this is quoting you, the people who said I was worth something, Mrs. Hughes, Mr. Brown, that's so rare in this world. I would give anything to be that person for someone. And then later in the book, you talk, in what you said to Priscilla Jenkins, whatever relationship you created with me, it helped me. So I hear you, implicit in this is a request, is encouragement for all of us to reach out when we can to young people who need our help.
Yeah, I mean, it can start anywhere in life, I think for me, like, the positive reinforcement we get at home, no one knows how much a child or a young person gets at home. I mean, my mom did the best she could, but there were a lot of problems surrounding me and my family, so much so that I always sort of hated myself and hated who I was and where I came from. And to hear positive reinforcement from people who don't have to love me because I'm their child or have to love me because they're my blood, there's no words for how much that can mean to a person, especially when it's something that you're trying to accomplish and maybe you're not so good at or maybe you're having doubts about. And to get positive reinforcement, even at any age, even now as a grown man, when someone tells me I'm doing something right, because most of the time people are telling me the stuff that I'm doing wrong, it is an amazing feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a musician. And so you never know that one going backstage or if Young Artist Program or anything and telling a singer like I really liked the way you sang today or I really liked the way you interpreted this note today. That person will take that to the bank, and whenever they're feeling down the next time they'll take that compliment, that positive compliment, and use that to push them forward. You never know what that can do to a person.
In the last couple of days, we've heard from some really dynamic women, in particular, women of color with deep connection to the arts, someone who heads up a dance company, someone who's been in the theater world, worked for the National Endowment for the Arts, and they're arts experts, but they've talked about their feeling uncomfortable when they attend opera performances, that they feel like outsiders. And certainly, Sing for Your Life, the book, documents your sense of being an outsider when you entered the opera world. Has this sense diminished over time, or do you still feel like an outsider?
I think currently in my career, it is definitely diminished. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. But I think at a certain point, I'm in the very beginning of my career. And I think as any opera singer or classical musician gets higher in their career and moves up, the pool becomes smaller. And it becomes less about if you can do it and more about what you're going to do next. And I think in my career, right at this point in my life, people are now thinking about not can he sing opera or is he capable of singing opera? It's more about where is his career going to lead him? What roles is he going to do next? Or how well can he do this role? And with that sort of mentality, the exclusion of being the color of my skin or my background is less relevant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is there something that you would say to us about what we at our opera companies, we in the field of opera, can do to make those who are new to our world feel less like outsiders?
Currently I'm living in Vienna, Austria, and I'm singing with the Vienna State Opera, and they I've been a part of their sort of outreach. And not as a young artist, but as an ensemble singer. And every member of their ensemble from age 60 to age 24 participates at some part of their time with the Vienna State Opera as an ensemble doing outreach. And what I mean by outreach is the Vienna State Opera is funded by the state. Half of its budget is funded by the state, the other half is donations. And the part that's funded by the state, they use for outreach. And so they own a smaller opera house next to the opera. It's like literally across the street. And in this small opera house, they perform at least 3 or 4 times a week children's operas with the main stage singers from the Wiener Staatsoper. And they do abridged versions of operas. They do even brand new works specifically for the children. And it's from ages, I think, like 5 to 14. Mm-hmm. And they start at 5 and up to 14, and so that means every year, for at least 10 years, the children who live in Vienna are going to see at least one opera a year, from 5 to 15. Mm-hmm. So when I look into the audience when I'm doing these kids' operas, there is every single kind of color, from Asian to black to Hispanic to Turkish to Albanian to Russian kids in the audience, who are all seeing opera, sometimes for the first time, sometimes for the 10th or 12th time, because it's a part of their curriculum, it's a part of their culture, and with that in mind, when you go to the Vienna State Opera, if any of you guys have ever been, you will look into the audience, specifically the standing room tickets, which are the cheapest, mm-hmm. and you will see teenagers there. You will see people in their 20s, in their teens, in their early 30s, sitting through an entire opera of Mozart or Verdi or some new piece, and on a Tuesday or a Saturday, any day of the week. And I think those teenage kids, those young adults, probably they think that it's not something weird to go to the opera. It's part of a normal Tuesday night. If you have mm-hmm. the time and the money, go see an opera. If you want to go on a nice date, go to the opera. And it's that sort of mentality starts at a young age. And that's something I think maybe we're lacking here in the United States. Currently we're taking more money away from the arts in high schools and the programs in the high schools to educate our children in music and how important it is, not only for participation, yep. for social skills, for studying skills, for all of these skills that they'll need later on in life to be citizens, proper right. citizens of the United States, yep. That have those skills. And I think that's something we can learn from overseas, what they do incredibly well, which is mm-hmm. why they're at like 99% capacity every night at the Wiener Staatsoper.
Yeah. Yeah. In the book, Eric Owens is quoted, and he says, "The antidote to color, to all the crap going through the minds of the people behind the casting table, is to sing so well that people go, oh shit." You have to overcome the visual. You have to make the visual irrelevant. You have to overcome orally. I knocked it out of the park in certain roles, and suddenly people thought, where's this guy been? He says, well, I've been right here in incognito. Incognito. Do you feel internal or external pressure to outperform because people who are auditioning you might think you're not going to be as good?
Again, I say now in my career, not so much, but for sure, like, you know, I talk about, and obviously in the book, Sing for Your Life, Dano, we've had many conversations about race, not only in my life, but in music and in America. And I think it's important to not shy away from those conversations because we all have preconceptions. I have them, you have them, we all have them about people, sexual preferences, religions, everything. We have our preconceptions that may be even so small that we think it's unimportant to us, but it can affect the way that we treat people and we get treated by others. And you know, for instance, if you're an auditioner and a 6'5", 300-pound black man walks into an audition room, most likely, I mean, it's the preconception, which is small, but you probably think, I hope he doesn't have a gospel voice, or I hope he can sing in Italian, instead of being like, I can't wait to see how amazing he's going to sound, or like, I hope he sounds like Dmitri Havrostovsky or Sam Raimi, and these kind of thoughts. Instead, you're putting him or her in a position of a preconception that you might have about what an African-American voice sounds like, or what an African-American singer's skill set is. And as small as that preconception is, it affects casting, it affects judgment. And I think those kind of preconceptions can't be solved unless you have conversations about it, unless you talk about it, unless you look at yourself and how you view others.
That must add incredible pressure to you, or did add incredible pressure auditioning, that you weren't only just nervous about rhythm and pitch and words, but that you were also nervous about the impression.
I think with my Met family, and my family, before I was at the Met, I was with Opera Colorado as a young artist there, and it was my first young artist program, and they did a lot for me as far as giving me a chance to sing roles on stage. I sang Colline at my first Colline with Opera Colorado in Denver, and it was a woman by the name of Ellie Calkins, who, after my first patron event for Opera Colorado, came up to me and told me that, have you ever done the Met competition? And I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. And she's like, actually, I think you are, and you should do it. And I was like, no, I don't think I'm ready. And if you guys know Ellie Calkins, you know that she's when Ellie Calkins wants something, you'll for sure know it. And so she told me that I should do it, and I'm going to do it, and so I did it. Not knowing that it would change my life, not knowing that I was even in the same stratosphere as the singers that were my age going to other programs and other schools. And I think it was a lot of that self-doubt was not because of my educators, it was all because of my background and what I thought people thought of me.
Right.
And if I didn't have the preconceptions of even myself from what I heard in the whispers and the talks and the way that people sort of doubled down on me and on criticism, on things that I did, I probably wouldn't have went in there thinking like, I'm just here to please someone else. I thought of like, I'm here to audition because I think that I could make it.
Right, right.
But hey, it turned out okay.
Was Ellie at the finals when you won?
Oh yes, she was. Oh yes, she was. And I'll always give her those props for
I have to send her a note.
for pushing me on to do it.
I'll send her a note. In terms of deciding that you were to go into opera, it must have confused, baffled your family. Where did this come from? Can you actually make a living doing that? Here you are breaking out of the limited family circle into the world of opera. What was the reaction from the family?
I mean, I think, again, a lot of communities, especially the worst communities in America, that's probably where we should be doing the outreach, to bringing opera to those kids in those communities, because these communities are probably don't know the opportunities that lie within classical music. Not only just the performing aspect of it, but there's administrative jobs, as all of you guys know, and so many more enjoyable opportunities that the music world, being involved with it, can provide you. And for my family, like, opera was something that was an elitist white art form to them. And I mean, honestly, it still is. There's a spread, a trickle of color around, and it's getting better with every generation. But if you think about it,
generationally, it's a slow way to go.
Yeah. If you think about it, it's only been 60 years since I was allowed to sing on the stage of the Met. And that's kind of a weird thought to think about it. Like it's now common, but not that long ago, I wouldn't even be able to sit in this chair with you and have this conversation. So it's expected for there to be a sort of lack of knowledge of the classical music world, especially opera, in the ethnic community because of that. But I think it's our right and our duty to make sure that people in the ethnic communities know what opportunities lie for them in this business.
The again, Gaelitha says in the book, you can tell he sought out a feeling of family here. And the author, Daniel Bergner, says that he'd sought out an approximation of family within the Met and found it in the protectiveness of coaches like Noda and in Nichols. And I certainly am aware from my own early years that sense of family that comes with being in the arts is really an important force. How did you find family? What nurture did you find from the opera family?
You know, I mean, there's so many artists and people in the business who can attest to the sort of nomad nature of being an opera singer. And you know, you live out of your suitcase if you're doing it right. And that kind of feeling, like, you know, when you do a show and you meet someone who you've done another show with prior, or went to school with, or had some sort of relationship with, and you see them again, and it's like seeing like a brother or a cousin that you haven't seen, or a sister or niece you haven't seen in so long. And that feeling is you can't be successful in this business without having it, I think, because otherwise you would just be lonely, and it could be a very lonely time.
Yeah.
And for me, the arts world was a way for me to get off the streets. It was a way for me to escape from my personal and problems that I was having, not only like in my house, but in my area. And that escape translated to family afterwards. When I went, it provided me with a way to go to college. I never thought that I'd be able to go to college for anything, or that people would want me to be in college for something. And when I did, and in a transition to the young artist world, the kind of nurturing I got from Opera Colorado and pushing me forward to the Met. And not many people, I don't know if people have the same feelings I have, but for me, when I went to the Met, it's a very big place. It's, you know, the biggest opera house in the United States, and one of the biggest in the world, and that kind of prestige that comes with that, I immediately felt like, okay, there's no way I can sort of have that feeling of being and at the other opera house I was a part of, but they opened their arms to me and nurtured me. Like they, as I said, they knew I was a diamond in the rough, and I needed a certain kind of attention, both bad and good. And they pushed me to be the best singer that I could be. And I sort of grew there not only as a musician, but I grew there as a man, and learned a lot of life skills and social skills that are helping me talk to you today.
You know, I think it is so important for all of us who are leaders in the opera field to recognize that we are always able and can create family around our opera company, so that the incredible, talented artists who are, if they are successful living out of a suitcase, find a nurturing environment in which to create the best possible art.
Yeah, and even now, like I mentioned Ellie Calkins earlier, like I talk to her at least once a month, and she's always following my career, and I'm always seeing what she's doing. And my Opera Colorado family, like even though I've yet to be back to sing there, like for me, it's still like where I've got my first chance to perform a major role.
Yeah.
So,
part of that extended family.
Yeah, exactly.
You say in the book, there's nothing prouder to me than being African American. There's no race more special in the United States. We persevered. Being African American is the greatest gift God could have given me. What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that? So, I mean, I'm going to give you guys a little history lesson. I'm sure all of you guys know, but African Americans are the only ethnicity in America who didn't choose to be here. 5 million of us were taken on slave ships from our homes and taken here to be slaves for hundreds of years. And no other ethnicity in America can say that. And that alone, the fact that we've survived and persevered through that, makes us, to me, the greatest testament to what America is. And the fact that it's in some of your parents who are still alive, we're in a part of a time in America where we were still considered subhuman. And that's a sad thought to have for me because I didn't grow up in that sort of environment, but my mother did, and my mother's mother did. And the fact that every field that we have been a part of, that we've been allowed to be a part of, we have succeeded and excelled in, though we have not been given the same tools, skills, and education that a majority of Americans who are Caucasian were allowed to have. And so when I say that, I say God gave, it is a gift to me that he made me this way, this color, and part of this ethnicity is because we are an ethnicity of conquerors and survivors and perseverers, and we have done amazing things in this country and for this country when we weren't given the opportunity to, or the rights to be that way. So I'm proud, beyond proud, and I will yeah. And that's what I mean by that. And I think if more the opportunities were allowed to African Americans and minorities to be a part of the classical music world at a young age, you'd be surprised what kind of singers we produce, what kind of artists we produce, and no longer would it be a European art form. It might be an American art form if we were allowed to do that.
What a call to action. Ladies and gentlemen, I think not only have we been chatting today with one of today's and tomorrow's great singers, but one of today's and tomorrow's great spokesmen for our art form, for our country. So we're going to go on and close the conference out, but what an honor to have this conversation with you, Speedo. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you take a seat? We'll continue right here.